Hey, good afternoon. Scott Luton, Greg White with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's live stream. Greg, how you doing?
I'm doing great. This is a live week, isn't it?
It is.
It's number
it sure
3
is.
for the week.
Yeah, it's been a busy week. So much to cover. But hey, one quick aside, we're all dealing with a wide variety of our own challenges. Thoughts and prayers go down to all the folks impacted in the Gulf with the storms. We've been tracking that over the last few days, and it's just some of the damage has been devastating. So that's the most important stuff, and we look forward to getting some updates on some of the situation down there in the days to come.
Good news is we didn't get the 20-foot storm surge that they were expecting, if there's any good news, right?
Yeah, well put. All right, but today on this live stream, we're going to be talking about optimizing data-driven decision-making in supply chains, not just today in 2020, but in the years to come, right?
Yeah. Data is so much a part of the supply chain these days, and the interconnectivity between companies, we got to talk about it, right?
That's right. And we already have some folks popping in. Stefan is back. Stefan, great to have you here on the link via LinkedIn. Jason Moss on his birthday.
Old friends.
That's right.
He's an OG.
Jason on his birthday is with us here. Jason, happy birthday to you, and great to have you here. Of course, Chris Barnes, Sylvia, all of y'all, great to have you here. All right, so today we've got two business leaders that are in the know and they're on the move on this topic. We're going to be bringing them in 10 to 15 minutes. We're kicking off a Twitter chat. So it's been a little while since we did a Twitter chat. We love Twitter around here. It's amazing what you can learn market intel wise via Twitter. So if you want to participate in the Twitter chat with us here today, there's two very simple guidelines that will help make your voice heard, right? And because we want to feature as much of our audience perspective as we can.
Right.
So the first guideline, Greg, and everyone sees the banner at the bottom. Hey, on all of your responses, use hashtag data-driven 2020. So that way it won't get lost in the shuffle, and we can find your responses both a couple different ways. So use hashtag data-driven 2020. And then secondly, we're going to be posing 5 questions to the audience and to our guests. And in your responses, if you could just make sure you use A1 or A2 so that we know which corresponding question you're speaking to. That's right. Yeah. It's like the wild, wild west around here when we do a live stream and Twitter chat. But, we have learned so much from our audience when we conduct these things. So we know they're going to come through again today, along with our two guests. All right. So, Greg, we've got a bunch of folks with us here today. Let's see. Allison, great to have you here.
Yeah. Really to see her again.
Yeah. One of our manufacturing leaders in the Atlanta area. Sophia, talk about a ball of energy and insights.
You better bring it on our live streams because she's going to review it.
That's right. She's like Gartner Jr. or something. She is going to vet things and then give her summary and review on it. Love it. Memory's back with us. Memory, of course, in Johannesburg. Tuned in via LinkedIn. Great to have you here. Of course, we couldn't do anything without Amanda and Clay in the background. They're engaging the audience and making sure that our audience's perspective is being shared effectively. And then two final ones here. Syed, who we're on his podcast, I think last week or two in Pakistan.
Yeah.
So Syed, hopefully this finds you well, tuned in via Facebook. And Corey Cromer, the legendary Corey Comer, the legendary Corey Comer. He is with us here today.
3 times fast.
That's right. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's pose the first Twitter question to the audience. And, if you're tuned in via Facebook or LinkedIn, y'all dive right in, share your answers. Just make sure you use A1, A2, so on and so forth. So first question, what are a couple of key considerations for enabling timely, proactive, data-driven supply chain decisions in 2020 and beyond? Answer now. And Greg, why don't you, as we're waiting for folks to kind of submit their perspective, what's the first thing that comes to mind in your, I'll put you right on the spot.
Yeah. Availability and cleanliness of data. Those are the couple things that jump out at me, right? First of all, you have to have some data. And secondly, it can't be erroneous data. I'm going to say it. It's been said 1,000 times, garbage in, garbage out. So we have to make sure that it's clean, cleansed.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Full of integrity.
Yes. Ooh, I like that. Yeah.
We've got a couple folks from Houston. We've got Lee from Houston. We also have Natan also from Houston, and both doing well. So that's great to hear.
Yeah, that is great. They were on the proper side of the storm, so they didn't take the brunt of it. But Houston's so close to the coast. This is a rough time of year for them frequently.
Great. Yep. Great news there. All right. So Allison, first response, making sure that the data you're using to make the decisions are valid. Kind of echoes what you were saying, Greg. Jenny, our best friend from South Africa, Jenny Froome, transparency, strong processes, agility, and skills.
I like that it says A1 transparency, because that is probably a number one, frankly, if you think about the answers or the question, right?
Agreed. All right. So we got two here from Twitter. Our good friends at Buyers Meeting Point, hopefully Kelly and the team are doing well, says resolving the massive data quality issues that plague our organizations. That's a great one. And then Stefan, what's a live stream without one Stefan Mao?
Well, and this guy is a data analyst. I mean, this is his bag, baby. So, yeah.
That's right. Number one consideration would be trust between companies. It is key to the supply chain. Then sharing the right data and data quality integrity. Good stuff there. I'm going to tackle a few others. Sylvia says, real data, clean data. Yes! Exclamation mark.
So both of our Germans have sounded off, right?
That's right.
Right here.
The stalwarts in our live stream audience, for sure.
Sylvia may be going back to Hamburg soon, right?
That's
and
right.
As she says, hummel.
Sophia says, first of all, define your data requirement.
Yeah.
If you don't know what you want and you don't know where you're headed, then what's the point of collecting data?
Man, that is so poignant. It's not data for data's sake, right? There's got to be a purpose.
That's right. All right. So we keep
bringing the experts, man.
Yeah, we got to. So to our audience, keep the comments coming in. We're going to bring on our two featured guests and have them weigh in on this question and others. And let's welcome in Tim Judge, President and CEO at Agillitics, and Shannon Vaillancourt, President and Founder at Ratelinx. Hey, Shannon, Tim, good afternoon. How you doing?
Good. Hey, Scott, Greg, thanks for having us.
Yeah, welcome aboard, man.
Absolutely. So you can, if y'all can't already make out, we've got some impressive folks in the audience, as usual, very informed audience that we have here. I learn something from them every single hour. But let's pose that first question to them, right, Greg?
Yeah, let's do. So the question that we're getting a ton of feedback on, I think we warned you that we would get a ton of feedback here. What are the couple of things for enabling this timely and proactive and data-driven supply chain decisions now and into the future? So love to hear what you guys are in the forefront of this every day, solving problems for companies. So tell us a little bit about what you're seeing or what you think or have found. Tim, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Greg. Well, I mean, you guys hit it on the focus point to start with, right? Data quality. And in context, what makes data quality so difficult is systems keep expanding, data keeps expanding. We're expected to have trillions of devices connected to the internet in the next few years. All of the data in the world up until 2013 was 5 exabytes of data, which is about 1 million gigabytes or 5 million gigabytes. And we're hitting that in about every minute. So in 60 seconds, we'll have hit about the equivalent of the data we hit from the beginning of time to 2003. So so companies are trying to keep up with data quality. So having a process in place and really thinking about it holistically, where we are now and into the future, is certainly a big one. People and process are another. So making sure that you have the right talent, the right team, and plan in place that understands spans both the supply chain operations as well as the data, the supply chain unicorns, as I like to call them.
Hey, real quick before we get Shannon's take, I want to share a couple of responses here. So Samant says right prediction models. That is a good take there. Kavan, forecasting as well as optimized decisions. I'm sure you're going to find
do something with that data is what he's saying.
That's right. And then one final one, proactive and reactive planning. Interesting take there. Well, I lied. One more before we get to Shannon. So Sarah Barnes Humphrey with Let's Talk Supply Chain, one of our friends of the show based in Toronto, said great topic. She's going to be answering on Twitter via the Let's Talk Supply Chain Twitter handle. So good stuff there, Sarah. Great to have you. All right. So Shannon, let's get your take.
Yeah, Shannon, you started a company that lives on data. So tell us a little bit about your take, or maybe even some practical things you've seen.
Well, I guess what I would do is I'm just going to dumb it down a little bit and start at the beginning, because I think what a lot of people forget is, where are you on the journey? And really, if you're going to use data, first you got to collect it. Sounds stupid, but you got to collect it.
I'm writing that down.
I'm telling you, you'd be surprised.
Yeah, you're right.
And then you got to collect the right data. So a lot of times we hear from companies that they're like, man, I got all this data. And you'll hear the cliche, I'm drowning in data but starving for information, because they're not collecting the right data. And then the third thing you got to do is you actually have to use it to make decisions. Mm-hmm. And this is a nuance, because what we find is a lot of companies are using data to justify the decision, not to make the decision. So it's like,
that's really interesting.
Collect the right data, and then actually use it to make a decision. It's like, let's keep it really simple. These are the three things. And, then once you get to that point, then it is about data quality. Data quality, don't forget the definition of it. It's, the data is fit for its intended purpose. So again, the right data. And that it actually describes the real world that you're trying to make decisions on. So that speaks more to your accuracy and your completeness and timeliness. Those are the three dimensions also.
So, Greg, I've forgotten, Shannon's a repeat guest with us. We interviewed him in person in Arizona at the DIMSCA conference before Life Change here in the States. Right. I had forgotten just how much of a smooth operator Shannon is. I mean, his delivery makes you just want to follow him, run through walls, right?
Well, look, it makes so much sense. One, we have our first T-shirtism, right, which is drowning in data, starving for information.
Right.
So we love it when you bring you drop that kind of knowledge, Shannon. But the other is, and it is so easy to forget, is to get back to basics, is to think about the basics. Don't get over your skis, right? You've got to be doing the foundational things right, like actually collecting data.
Yeah.
And all the things you said, Shannon, to make sure you can leverage it into some of the things that folks are talking about. You can't forecast if you don't have the right data. You can't predict if you don't have the right data. And the other thing really poignant is data for justification's sake. Those days are dead, aren't they? I mean, these days with the wealth, the availability, they should be dead. You're right.
But they're not.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing. But it should be either helping you make the decision or even driving a system to make the decision for you, or at least a recommendation based on the accumulation data.
Yep.
Well said.
Well said. All right. So to our audience, Nirfad is here. He is our resident comedian. So be prepared.
Yes.
Hope you brought your sense of humor. Great to see you.
And hair critic.
That's right. Great to see you, Nirfad. Jeffrey Miller is here, one of our sage supply chain leaders. Looking forward to his comments. Hey, to our audience, we're running a live stream where you can submit your own take on these questions, and a Twitter chat at the same time. Just make sure on the Twitter chat you can find it on the Supply Chain Now channel. Use the hashtag data-driven that you see in the banner there, so we can find it a little bit easier. And make sure you put A1 or A2 based on which question, A1 through A5 based on which question you are answering. Yeah. Okay, so let's keep driving. Let's go with question 2, Greg. Are you ready?
I think I'm ready. Yes.
All right.
So visibility is one of the hot topics in business and certainly supply chain. So we keep hearing about visibility and control towers and all of those really advanced things, but how have you both, or any of you out there, seen your organizations optimize visibility lately? I mean, in just the months maybe since COVID hit, it's such a critical thing, and so necessary, because I believe, and I think a lot of us believe that, and I'd love to hear, Tim, from you and Shannon on this, that a lot of companies have to get to greater levels of automation and greater levels of analysis in order to survive forthcoming disruptions. So let's put that out there to the audience. But Shannon, I mean, you see this a lot. Can you sound off on what you've seen or think or expect?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely the hottest topic out there. We've noticed that it's gotten a lot more, I don't know, I almost said visibility, a lot more visibility within the company. It's gotten a lot more attention within the company and become a higher priority. What I've seen personally out there in the market is that this is the struggle, because again, it comes back to, the basics. Do they have data? Is it the right data? And that's where they're trying to turn on these visibility solutions, just finding that they've got issues. So really what they're doing, I think, is finally realizing that they have to do something. I think we're at the very beginning stages of all this. We've been talking about it for years, I would say. And all that happened in the last few months with COVID is it just made everybody realize how important it really is. It's no longer a nice to have. It's a need to have. And, what I heard from one company, it was interesting. They said that with COVID, one of the things that happened was their volume went up 30%. And they said the challenge that it put on them and the stress was, we didn't have 18 months to plan for the increase. We had like 18 hours.
Right.
And they're like, so what do you do? And so what they do is they go back to basics and they start going through their processes and figuring out, okay, which one of these processes actually belong in the business? And they said, does this process pay the rent? So that's why what we're seeing is they're doing whatever they have to do to get the visibility. And I think the truth is it's a lot of manual right now, because it's a challenge. And I know that Tim sees this a lot too, on his side with stuff. So I'd be curious to see to hear what you have to say too, Tim.
Yeah. Hey, before we get your take, I want to share two quick things from the audience. So first, Sophia says, and we're talking again, how have you seen supply chain organizations optimize visibility in recent months? Sophia says, by connecting all their different systems and making visuals, for example, dashboards, available to all employees. I think that's a great comment there, especially the second half. And then Jeffrey Miller says, in the early days of IoT connectivity, the let's put sensors on everything gangs institutionalized a lot of bad habits. We grabbed data because we could, not because we had decision-making use for it. Has that behavior ended, or do you still see availability-driven data collection out there? That's a great question. But Tim, let's get your take on the initial
I'd love
question.
to come back to that question though, but Tim, let's get your take on Shannon's take. And
take.
All right, take it.
We're just takers here.
Well, we should be givers. No,
Right.
I completely agree. With Shannon's assessment. I think COVID really brought to the forefront and made it even more urgent on, in general, visibility is going to be a little bit fuzzy for ROI. Like how do we quantify it, right? How do you quantify customer sentiment around getting their shipments on time and the quality of the shipments? You don't see it right away, but everyone knows it's hugely impactful. COVID really shed a light on, what's the tangible ROI of not being able to fulfill product, having to switch manufacturing plants on the fly, how to change our picking strategies to accommodate, full e-commerce, capabilities, and shifts of demand. And, if you don't have that quality data that we talked about in one place and have that data foundation, which is the beginnings of visibility, you're really flying blind, right? And for a lot of companies that take 6, 9, 12 months to do a full refresh of their data, and we see that all the time with large companies, with small companies, that enables your more advanced prediction, optimization, anything utilizing mathematics to make decisions. You first got to start with the foundation. So it's not acceptable anymore to really have it take that long. And things like COVID, things like changes in customers, things like innovation, to see what some of these companies out there have done to global brands, with a team of 5 to 10 in their garage, to ship direct to the consumer and build that relationship, are all things that have moved that, as Shannon said, from a nice to have to a need. I even go a step further to say, holy crap, for us to stay relevant and in business, we need to do, we have to do something.
Yeah. I think, look, you two have both mentioned this, and I want to challenge the both of you and also Jeff Miller on this point. But first, I think what companies have recognized is that they have scrambled and stumbled and scraped along. And this disruption, they've faced other disruptions and they've kind of made their way through them. But this disruption was so all-encompassing that it exposed the inadequacies. And both of you have essentially said, you've got to get over the line of doing something. So this is the question, follow-up question I'd love to pose to you. And that is, what have you seen, or what do you suggest that companies do? What is maybe a bottom rung of the ladder kind of solution that they can do just to get over the line of doing something?
I can start.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I probably should have. You'd think I've done this before.
It's like even I'm looking at myself, and it's like, I don't know, should I talk? So one of the things that I would like to point out too with what you're saying, Greg, is what makes this COVID situation so unique, and I think has exposed the challenges of not having data, is nobody can rely on experience, because there's two ways to make decisions.
Right.
Data or experience. I don't know of anybody that was alive the last time this happened who's working in supply chain today. As much as we like to joke that there's a lot of old people in supply chain, they're not that old.
Yeah.
So
right.
That's why you can't rely on experience anymore. The old gut feel, there is no gut feel for this because we've never experienced this before. So that's why I think it really does, again, I keep it simple. You got to collect some data, and really what you got to do is don't just collect it for collection's sake, like the previous tweet was talking about.
Right.
Even if people do that, they're like, hey, let's create a data lake. And I'm just going to throw all this stuff in there. And it's like, because I might need it. And it's like, but will you? And then how the heck are you going to get it out of there?
Right.
So I think you really got to just take a look at yourself and say, okay, prioritize where your biggest gaps are, where your biggest opportunities are, and start there. And only bite off as much as you can chew. I think that's where sometimes they're trying to boil the ocean, and then they're like, why did this not work? And it's like, yeah, you got to stay focused, and staying focused and having some successes. So like I was told this like 20 years ago by somebody. He's like, hey, Shannon, you always go for the knockout punch, and you can't do that. You got to do body blows. And then once they drop their hands, then go for the knockout punch. And I think that's how you got to look at the data side too. A little body, some body blows is not sexy, but it gets the job done, and eventually you can go for the knockout.
All right. Excellent. And there's so many Mike Tyson isms we could put in this conversation at this point. But let's keep driving. We got to get to the next three questions. This answer came from Let's Talk Supply Chain. They're making smarter and more strategic business decisions, becoming more agile so they can pivot faster. Good stuff there. And Clay, I think we had one from Buyer's Meeting Point as well. If you can share that. In the meantime, while he gets that, Stefan says, unfortunately, and this goes back to how companies are achieving more visibility. Stefan says, unfortunately, not much here. All the latest tech is very expensive since it is in demand. And I do have the feeling that companies still have the outdated view that saving money in an industry turn is more important than investing and launching out of it more stronger than ever. Good stuff there from Stefan. I got a few more I want to share. Well, there's perfect. Here's Buyer's Meeting Point from Twitter, which is, by the way, an outstanding Twitter account to follow, especially if you love procurement. Kelly says tier 1 visibility. Oh, that's the last one, Clay. I think there was a second one, and if not, no worries. Let's keep driving with this commentary here from Oh, here we go. We want to get back to Jeff's. I told y'all it's a wild, wild west. We've got comments and questions flying from different platforms. So let's get back to Jeff Miller's question before we go to question 3. And that is, how much availability-driven data collection are y'all still seeing out there? Tim, why don't you lead with that?
Yeah, and I think we're making a lot of certainly a lot of progress. It introduces more levels of complexity, having more and more data. So to kind of tie that to the last question is I like the term bite small, chew fast, right? How do we take a look at our current data and processes and what we're doing, even from our legacy systems, and look at how do we enable, how we get those quick wins, from a particular team. There's a reason that Excel is still probably the most popular supply chain technology out there. Mm-hmm. Why is that, right? It's because there's innovation and technology that's, cover your ears, supply chain practitioners, but that's outside of supply chain, right? So how do we enable that technology that it's commoditized, right? And I know it gets the impression that it's super expensive. Power BI is $10 per user per month right now, right? So there's a lot of technology that's still a leaps and bounds more flexible, more collaborative in nature, that companies can kind of get behind and have it POC created or minimum viable product in a specific team to get that value out of. And users are flocking to that, right? That's why shadow IT projects are on the rise, and teams are kind of using their own tools that they like, is because they can't wait around for the legacy systems to really catch up in the integration that needed. They need answers and they need it quick. So instead of allowing them to do that, how do we have leadership involve those different groups and again, bite small, chew fast, and try to get some quick wins with data.
Well put.
That's a really good point. That is a big trend in the marketplace and has been for nigh on a decade, which is, this department uses Excel, this department uses some other business BI tech, and this one uses Power BI or whatever. And nary the twain shall meet. So that creates its own challenges.
Oh, I don't speak Middle English, Greg. You're gonna have to talk slower so I can understand you better. Hey, this from our own tweet says, "Bite small and chew fast." I love the image that brings up. Yeah. Kevon says, first clear and qualified data, then testing business continuity plans, then optimizing the supply chain operations according to well-processed historical data. However, such disruptions, pandemics, should be planned based on being rather optimistic or pessimistic. These events are not that predictable. Good stuff there. And from memory, she likes that example of boiling the ocean. I think Shannon mentioned that. There's a trend of defaulting to old habits and being complacent in keeping momentum high to keep changes sustainable. Good stuff there. And finally, from Pierre, before we move to question 3, Pierre says, hey, Tim, agreed. Focus is critical with the availability of data that is unconstrained. Companies are caught up first, maybe, in analysis paralysis and never get to the knockout punch. Excellent commentary from Pierre. Okay. So go ahead.
That's okay. I think this is a logical transition to our next question, but we talked about visibility. Now we're going to talk about another catchphrase, Shannon, and that is transformation. In this case, digital transformation often, right? But think about a few change management methodologies that leaders ought to be using or are using, or you see that could be used to lead those kind of transformations? What have you seen from that standpoint? Tim, let's start with you.
So I would say there's a lot of, and I'm sure you're seeing this too, Greg, there's a lot of blurring on what's, well, let's start from a department and function perspective. So what defines supply chain, purchasing, marketing, in traditional roles, what data, that they need, what responsibilities are they over, what initiatives. There's also a blurring, I would say, between time windows of how decisions are made. So are we talking, a typical planning cycle? Are we talking a design-based decision? Are we talking more operational decision that needs to be made? So there becomes a lot of complexity and confusion around what teams own that, those types of decisions. So what I do see is companies doing a better job of building things like a center of excellence dedicated for supply chain that would bring in different departments that solve problems that would traditionally need input from all of those different functions. So you're starting to see teams that have ownership of both the visibility side. So they're going to need, business intelligence and data expertise focused on supply chain. You're going to see them bring in resources that are traditionally focused on modeling and things that you would do with optimization type solutions and linear programming, as well as finally on the planning side with solutions like Kinaxis and others out there, all in one team to be able to determine, because they're all sharing the same data from the most part, right? So their needs, and that's another way to move quickly is how do we get a representation from those small teams to be able to build those foundations, provide that visibility that our business partners need in those different functions that they need day in and day out, while you leveraging that same data that you use for visibility to better plan for the future for things like S&OP, S&OE, and design strategy.
Excellent. Shannon, before we get your take there, let's get Sophia's take and one other. Sophia says, don't make it about the tool, but rather about the people. As people, we have to be part of the solution and own the change. I love that. Sophia's bringing it today, as always.
Well, that's really necessary for these transformations, because ultimately that's who adopts these things, right?
Yep.
You can shove as much data or even tech at people that you want, but it's got to be used or referred to or drive recommendations or even decisions.
Well put, Greg. As always, Jamin, is that via Twitch or that might be Twitter? Anyway,
no, that's Periscope. That's
Periscope.
Twitter.
Gotcha. Dedicated resources to bring collaboration across all business channels is so clutch for an agile supply chain. Good stuff there. And one more before we get Shannon's take. Stefan, you're typing fast.
How does he do it?
Putting the book together. Love it. So buy-in from your teammates, he says. Programs are just tools used by the company's greatest asset, people. Ask the teammates working with the actual programs and the data. They are the experts in the data and programs themselves. Be a servant leader and provide the tools they need. Then the system will take care of itself. Okay, Shannon, your take. Again, we're talking key change management considerations for driving and leading transformation.
Yeah,
and I really think it is dependent on the people. I mean, I've seen it over and over again. Culture eats strategy for lunch every day of the week. And if you don't get the people to buy in, how are you ever going to make change? And that's why I stick to a real simple and easy fundamental. I always think about, M&M. I love M&Ms anyways.
Who doesn't?
Right.
First of
But
all,
it's easy to remember. And
if you don't, I don't want to hear about it in the comments, by the way.
I'll tell you what, I remember when I was in high school, I used to be able to get a pound bag and a large Coke, and I could actually survive eating the whole thing in like an hour.
And not gain a pound either, right, Shannon?
Oh, yeah. I'd probably lose weight. So M&M, it's all about measure and monitor is how I think about it. Measure and monitor what you're doing, because at the end of the day, we need the people to buy into it. And if they see the positive, it's positive reinforcement. Look at how good we're doing. Look at it's making progress. Because that's what happens when they put these center of excellences together is these guys are measuring and monitoring everything, and they're seeing the positive outcomes, and they're also seeing what's taking away from the change so that they can quickly make the adapting to the, whatever they're seeing out there. So that's why I always stick to M&M. That's how I always think about it, and it should make it easy.
Chris says, culture eats strategy for lunch with some M&Ms. All right, Greg, you had a follow-up point. Oh, hang on, Greg, before your follow-up point. Yeah. That's from Byers' meeting point. Transformation starting now have to be iterative. Smaller phased changes that provide opportunities for leaders to factor in unsettled elements in the macro environment. The visibility horizon just isn't that far right now. Good stuff there from Kelly at Byers' meeting point. All right, Greg, you had a follow-up comment.
I happen to be somewhat passionate about this topic, but clearly I was channeling not just what Tim and Shannon said, but also Kelly at Byers' meeting point, because, people ask me a lot about digital transformation. So I don't want to get all into what digital transformation is, but let's just talk about transformation or change of any kind. And the truth is, everyone who has commented here has been dead on. It needs to be small. You need to involve your people. It needs to be a proximate pain. That's one thing that I cannot state too strongly. And Shannon, you kind of alluded to that. It should be something that your team is begging to have solved, not something you in the ivory tower or the corporate office feel needs to be solved. The way that you get them to M&M, right, to measure and monitor, is to give them that thing that hurts them personally, makes them feel bad about their job or about the effectiveness of it, and take that away, take that pain away, and then demonstrate with M&M that, as you're talking about, that it's made you more effective, that it's made, frankly, your life better. You have to acknowledge that it is bettering people's lives that you're really starting with, that really gets that buy-in. And that's a critical component of it, is to find the pain that people are begging to have changed, not to project a pain that even the corporation see. It needs to be personal to start.
Yep.
And when they start to see those problems solved, then they'll start to buy into some of those bigger, more strategic things.
Yep.
Memories echoing a lot of what you are sharing here. To improve transformation ownership, we need to increase buy-in from employees and for leaders to be consistent. That's a good point. Consistent in the growth and change strategies going forward. Is there enough consistency in leadership these days? There's probably never enough. That's a great point, Memory. Okay. For the sake of time, we probably should move right along to question 4. I know there's a lot more we can dive into when it comes to change management, but hey, it's the nature of these live streams. We got to move fast. All right. So question 4, if we can throw that up there.
Yeah.
All right. Question 4, Greg. Many organizations are in the midst of digitization efforts. Where do you see leaders making critical mistakes in these transformation efforts? Again, to our audience, be sure to use the hashtag data-driven2020 and A4 as you preface your answers and responses to this question. All right, Greg.
Yeah, so both of you have to have seen this. I mean, considering what your businesses do, Shannon, tell us a little bit about, don't name names, please, unless you particularly want to, but unless they're not a client anymore. But where have you seen some of these critical mistakes made, and maybe outline one or two that just stick in your mind?
Well, it all comes down to data quality. You can't digitize a decision unless you have quality data. So again, everything's just so connected together. If I've got bad data, I'm going to make bad decisions. Last night I'm watching TV and commercial comes on and it talks about, hey, the #1 movie in America today is Unhinged. And I'm like, I look at my wife and I go, it's the only movie. Then I
saw that, Shannon. I didn't even know there were movies out. Right?
Marketing.
Yeah, but then the next scene it says it is the only movie out in America. So it's like, see? So it's like I could have been totally misled into going to the movie thinking it's really good.
Yeah.
The only one out. So of course it's #1. It's also the bottom movie that's out. So again, to talk about, if I'm going to digitize decision making and things like that, I gotta have quality data. It's got to be accurate, complete, and timely. So it's got to represent the real world it describes. And that's where we see that a lot of companies will digitize the decision making, and then they're like, oh, it didn't work. And it's like, well, right, because you got bad data, or you're missing a piece of it that's critical. And that's just what we see all the time. And most of the time, so you think about some of these, the one that we see a lot is usually around people trying to automate certain processes, and they're like, there's too many exceptions, and then they throw bodies at it. And yeah, you have exceptions because you have a data quality problem. That's ultimately the issue. And because there aren't many systems out there that have data quality as part of their offering, that's what's missing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
that's a really good point. Data quality issues or process issues. How many times have we seen people try to automate a really, really bad process, and all they do is fail that much faster and effectively, right?
Yep.
Tim, go ahead, Scott. I got no sound from Scott.
Oh, here we go. Before we get Tim's take, Sophia and Jamin kind of speak to the same thing here. Sophia says, applying what others have done and thinking it will, by default, work on their company. And then Jamin said earlier, kind of along the same lines, let's see here. Well, basically said you can't just do it because the Joneses are doing it, right? Keep up with the Joneses. You won't get much buy-in. Jamin also says, hey, being too vague and broad in implementation is making it tough to measure and even tougher to get buy-in. Good stuff there from Jamin and Memory. All right, so Tim, weigh in for us.
Yeah, and actually to tie this back to culture and the people side, I really believe there's been kind of a failure in leadership to, hey, everybody knows we need to, to generate buy-in. And I was listening to a podcast this morning from Keith Ferrazzi when he was talking about where buy-in is BS. Buy-in is I'm trying to sell you on something that I think you need as a leader. And what we really need is kind of a co-creation, right? Because who's going to know what they're trying to solve? Who's going to hear that feedback from the customers? It's going to be the people on the front line. It's going to be the people interacting. So rather than, again, let's go collect the world of data and figure out how to use it. Let's start with what problems we're trying to solve, what decisions we're trying to make, how that ties to our business strategy, and get the input from all of those different teams before even embarking on how we're going to collect the data. Because collecting data that you don't need, or it's not clean, or it's not important, is a waste of time, right? So starting with that as kind of the beginnings, and rather than focusing on, hey, I'm going to make a decision and push it down the organization from a buy-in, let's get their input. Let's start with what's needed, back into what data to collect, then go to how to collect it, and then how to give them the information to make decisions. So I think we're going at it backwards, and we need to kind of turn it around and start from that.
Preach it, brother. Yeah, that is dead on. How many times does buy-in mean make a decision in that ivory tower and then stuff it down people's throats? That's absolutely critical. And everyone has kind of talked to or around that point. Buy-in starts at the beginning, doesn't it? And really, who knows better than the people who are facing the pain to help construct the solution?
Excellent point. Love the kindred spirits on this live stream here today. All right, so Stefan says collecting too much data, and then the much mentioned garbage in, garbage out. Also, the automation is just as good as the underlying process. Processes need to be planned thoroughly, otherwise your faulty process is just faster, not better. All right, good stuff there, Jeff.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, Jeff says failure to balance between digitization of data to solve a long-standing weakness and digitization of data to enable a new capability. Good stuff there. And we're talking about what mistakes we're seeing leaders make when it comes to digitization. Say that 5 times fast.
Yeah.
And transformation.
Only Daryl Lou can say it that many times fast.
That's right. All right. So a lot of good stuff there. I love that, Greg, going back to your point, where buy-in starts right up front. I mean, it's not something you get in stage 3 or 4. Or, it reminds me of that phrase, you drive change with the people. You don't do it to the people, or some version of that. That is so relevant and timely in 2020, right?
Well, look, I can feel it. We're in a room of, let's call it room full of founders, right? We're in a room of those smart asses who sat in the back of the room all through their high school and college and probably careers before they started their own businesses, who thought, I can do it better than that. They saw the mistakes made by managers. I mean, I'm sure we all saw great leadership and challenges conquered and things like that. But you see so often those things that are done wrong, and you just feel compelled to fix it, right?
Yep.
And you can just feel that in this conversation here.
Agreed.
Jeff Miller and some of these other folks as well, right? Clearly have felt that pain and are, sharing their wisdom.
Yep. Sneha, hope this finds you well. Great to have you here on the live stream once again. Says buy-in also needs to include people who are executing the process, not just at the management level. Greg, I think all of y'all have spoken to that. Good stuff there, Sneha. Okay.
Do you feel, Shannon and Tim, do you feel like we need to get all these people in a room and we could just solve the problems that we're talking about? It seems like it's interesting to look at what the audience is saying, what you all are saying, and that we all foundationally agree, and yet it's somehow not getting done. Where do you think the message is being lost?
Great question.
Yeah, and if I start, I think it's a great question, Greg. I think it's communication. I think most organizations have trouble speaking up and tapping into their workforce, quite honestly, and being transparent and candor. And there's two ways to create candor. One, you can hire all a-holes, if I can say. I don't know if you can curse on this. But there's not enough a-holes out there, and that doesn't. And the second way to do it is to get create a culture where you can speak up and know that you're not going to be punished by bringing ideas. And you need to try to scale that out from across the departments in your organization, because those people they know in those different groups the way that we do this process is archaic and we need to, better. And you just tap into those people. There's also best practices that each of these teams are probably enabling on a day-to-day basis, that if you could just tap into that and scale that out across your organization, you'd see real benefits.
What do you think, Shannon? That's a good point, Tim.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I don't think it's desire. I think it's just a fear of failure. Very simply put, I mean, there's a reason why we're founders, and not everybody can do it. It's fear of failure. I mean, if you really think about failing and are afraid of it, you're not going to put yourself out there to make a change. I mean, think about, you're about to tell somebody, hey, let's do this. This will solve the problem. There's a lot of fear there around, what if it doesn't
Big
work?
risk, isn't it?
I'm going to look stupid, or, oops, I'm going to be embarrassed. And it's like, that part of your brain has to kind of turn off sometimes. And you got to make the best decision you can and go forward. Again, that's why everything we've talked about today, if you're collecting data, it's the right data. If you're biting small, chewing fast, you're able to do these things better. So again, like you said, Tim, best practices, I think we've got a lot of them that we've talked about here today. And maybe that'll help get people over that hump of the fear side.
Yeah. All right. So much. The juices are flowing here today, and I'd love to dive in deeper to the responses. But for the sake of time, we've got to flip over to question 5.
Let's bust out the crystal ball, gang.
Yeah, that's right. Because we also have a great story we're going to tackle on the back end of this live stream. So the final question of the live stream and the tweet chat today, looking ahead to 2021, do you see any industry surprises that we aren't talking about right now? Any bold predictions, folks? All right, who's going first?
Yeah.
Oh,
and Shannon, let's start with you.
Great. I guess the bold prediction I would make for 2021 is that people will actually use data to make a decision. Now, I think that's the easy one. I think what you're going to see is that which companies are going to take the leap on data and skip to the next level. I think right now, one thing I've learned in this industry is that we're about 10 years behind, typically. So which company is going to jump to what is really relevant today? And what I mean by that is, if you look at what most companies are trying to do today, is they're trying to create dashboards, trying to create reports, so that way a human can look at it, interpret, and make a decision. Who is really going to digitize the decision making, skip that process, and go directly to AI and machine learning and really get a huge competitive advantage because it exists, and who's going to do it first? And I think that's what we're going to see for 2021. I think it's because COVID showed that we got to be able to work faster, and the definition of speed completely changed with COVID. So that's my prediction, is I think some companies are going to skip and bypass reporting in BI, because BI is the rearview mirror, and they're going to go more to the digital decision making and really focus on the data quality.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a good point. I agree with that.
All right. So before we get Tim's take, I want to share this. And for some reason, I don't have visibility into who this is on LinkedIn. So if Clay or Amanda can share that with me. The need for the C-level and top managers to convince everyone they have all the answers is a leftover from the 90s.
Fetishization.
Yeah, of the CEO. Thank you, Greg.
I think that's what they mean.
Yeah. New vocabulary for me.
I'm not sure this is the right time of day for that kind of word.
That is
usually you got to pay $2.99 a minute for that kind of action.
That is the obstacle to getting input from the market or their own people on the front lines. Good stuff there. All right. So Tim, Shannon, thanks for going first. Tim, let's talk about what we're not talking about, or give us a prediction for the future.
I think we're going to see, and we're starting to, of course, is a huge acceleration in convergence of things like AI, robotics. And I think companies that are starting now are starting with a workforce that is extremely comfortable with technology, with with innovation, with new tools and technology that helps engage their users, and there's size no longer matters, right, when it comes to our organizational size necessarily. So I think the gap's going to widen if larger companies and organizations don't invest and give focus into what their next growth plans to take advantage of these technologies do. And it's always difficult for large organizations to innovate from within, right? It's why Steve Jobs had a separate skunk team to work on the Macintosh. It's why in larger companies do that, is because it's difficult. So understanding that it's difficult and getting the right teams together to innovate, I think, is going to be extremely important.
Love that. So I've got some answers I'm going to share from the audience here in just a second, but Buyer's Meeting Point says the best tip of the day is don't hire all a-holes. So that's resonating. So I guess we can say that on the live stream.
Another t-shirt.
All right. So this comes from
merch.
This comes from Twitter. Go ahead, Tim. Were you going to say something?
I was just saying, you could do it with a hedge fund. If you only need 200 people, you could probably get by, but you can't do it in technology, unfortunately.
Spoken like a true founder.
That's right. So this comment from Twitter says, maybe there will be a big change in how businesses interface with clients. I agree with that. Stefan says, hey, being bold, drone delivery becomes mainstream. Electric vehicles, cars, and trucks will reduce cost per mile significantly. No more broken motors and transmission. Free fuel with trucking companies having a huge charging network. That's great. That's lesser cost.
That's bold.
Freight.
You asked bold. That's bold.
That's right. Sophia says she's going to say food delivery. So food delivery is going to be here for the long haul, I think it seems like, in Sophia's take. Jamin via Twitter says, I think outside tech, we will see a shift in talent as the dust settles from 2020. People will be more aggressive about moving to ideal companies or work setups. Good stuff there. Oh, by the way, DeClain, great to have you. He's watching via LinkedIn in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So great to have you here with us, DeClain. One final
global right there.
That's right. One final comment from Chris here. A rapid shift to AI-driven predictive change. Systems will both suggest and make changes automatically. Good stuff there. I think my kids are predictive. They're suggesting changes and making them whether I give them permission or not. That's where we're headed.
That is my term of the day, predictive. I mean, really, if we think about look, as Shannon said earlier, we have all kinds of predictive models. They couldn't predict this. What has come to the fore in this crisis and in so many crises, but this one was just so vast that it highlighted things, is that adaptability is critical to success, even more critical than prediction.
Yeah, great point. Absolutely. Let's double down on that. That's not only where we're headed, it's where we already are. Memory shares. I think there is room for improvement to bottle down technology innovations, especially on data quality down to lower tiers of the supply chain, moving things downstream. And then finally, Pierre, last mile delivery will go beyond the big box players and be deployed at much lower levels of industry. All right, good stuff. So really appreciate everyone participating in this Twitter/live stream chat. Some fascinating comments we got, not just from our panel here, but equally as fascinating and intriguing from our audience. So thanks so much for participating. We want to wrap. We got two things to tackle before we call it a live stream. The first is Shannon and Tim, your organizations have some really big news. So let's talk about that. So I think we're going to get Tim's take first. Tim, tell us more about this big news.
Yeah, sure. And appreciate Scott and Greg, your time. What a great conversation and the questions from the audience. One of the things that, as you probably got from this conversation, is Shannon and I see eye to eye on a lot of the challenges companies are facing, the importance of data quality and visibility. Gartner predicts, I think within 3 years, over 50% of companies will be starting to invest in transportation visibility solutions and the like. So I think from Ratelinx as a partner for us and being able to provide that visibility and everything that we do from a service perspective for our customers is huge, and just saw eye to eye on a lot. So I look forward to the continued partnership.
Outstanding. And Shannon.
Yeah, I mean, echo exactly what Tim said. I mean, we really have the same outlook on things. We're trying to help our customers solve these difficult problems. And what we found is that we've got part of the data, he's got part of the data, and we just got to pull it together. It's make the peanut butter cup. It's all better together, right?
I love the way you eat, Shannon.
No kidding.
It was.
That's why you run so much.
So give us an idea of maybe the biggest business problem or the most painful problem you all have seen that caused you to put this together. I mean, what do you think you solved best together?
It's common customer questions, and if you know me well, I just the noise and uncertainty in the market. Sherry Heinisch calls it that customers have shiny object fatigue, right? I think there's a lot of confusion in the market. Terms like control tower and analytics and optimization and AI is just it's hard to go to get from point A to point B. And I think what Shannon and I really realized is let's take a step back and help companies get that quick win very, very fast and not small, right? I want to do it 10x faster, right? How do we get the value to the customers and really provide solutions so that they could start seeing value ASAP? So we both saw a need in the market to be able to do that.
Yeah, and it's the sustainable year-over-year value that we're able to deliver together between, his organization and our organization. I think that's really what the companies are looking for, because quite honestly, they don't know how to do it, or they kind of know, how to go. And that's where with Tim and I's organizations, we're able to go in there and do it very quickly, because a lot of these companies just are strapped for resources from an IT perspective.
Yeah.
And that's where we can bridge that gap and get them accelerated down the path to, making data help them and drive these decisions and really impacting the bottom line.
I think a lot of companies, and that's one thing we didn't really address here, but we probably should, is everybody has a day job. And especially now, those day jobs might be 2 or 3. We just talked to somebody at a very large company who now has 2 jobs effectively, right? So having someone who is an expert and creates an accelerant and gets you on that bottom rung of the ladder or higher if you're already on the ladder, right? And is able to instill and create sustainability in those kind of initiatives is really, really valuable right now. I hope that companies recognize that speed and employing expertise is as important as taking on the initiative in and of itself, right?
So let's talk about, so congratulations on all the growth and the partnership. We'll keep our finger on the tabs and see where this goes and just how much more you can help. Shannon, I really like both of y'all spoke to it, but I really, speed and acceleration seems to be the theme of this week. Greg, it's probably the theme of several years here, but certainly we've heard a lot about that for whatever reason this week. And as Jameis says in the comments, speed matters. Absolutely. All right. So there's also an upcoming webinar. You're talking about speed and building a control tower in 30 days is going to be the subject of an upcoming Ratelinx webinar. And Shannon, are you leading that, or is Nate, or who on the team is leading the webinar?
I think it's going to be Nate with you, Tim, right?
Yep, I'll definitely be participating for sure.
Outstanding. And you're confident you can get it done in 30 days or less, right? Or money back?
Absolutely.
Speed, man.
Man, throw down the gauntlet, Scott.
Hey, just making a play on that famous Domino's jingle from yesteryear. So much good stuff with Shannon and Tim. Yeah. Really appreciate y'all's your approach, your openness, and all the insights you shared today. To our audience, the direct link for that webinar, which sounds like it's going to be featuring Tim and Nate Endicott with Ratelinx, can be found in the show notes. So y'all make sure you sign up for that. Big thanks again to Shannon Vaillancourt, a president and founder with Ratelinx, and Tim Judge, president and CEO of Agillitics. We hope to see you soon, and maybe we'll bring you back on in the year, and we'll see how your crystal ball predictions plays out.
Love it.
That's so unfair. We should be like ESPN and never replay any of the ridiculous things that that people predict, right?
That's right. I wish so. But
where would Lou Holtz be if we held him accountable?
2 for 200. I don't know. But Shannon and Tim, thanks so much. We look forward to reconnecting with you real soon.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Appreciate it.
All right. I was hoping that swoosh was coming. It might have been an extra second or two. But what a fast-moving, we're talking speed a second ago.
Yes.
Fast-moving, accelerated conversation. So many topics, big, meaty topics, and a ton of perspective. The audience did not let us down. They never do,
Yeah. Well, I think this is one of the most engaging topics. First of all, it's so vague. Right. And I think Sophia referenced that early on, is you have to make it tangible. You have to connect it to the people. Frankly, I think you have to extract what that need is for collecting data or for digitization or process change and improvement. You have to extract that from the people feeling the pain that we talked about a few minutes ago, and get their engagement and buy-in first.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. So many t-shirt isms in today's conversation, and really, really real, not lip service. Shannon and Tim, they're doing it. They're helping other organizations do it. So capture these opportunities. All right. So let's talk about briefly, we're going to wrap up here momentarily. And again, thanks to the audience for the wonderful, all the participation and engagement. 2 events coming up that you need to be aware of beyond the webinar that Ratelinx is putting on. The first one, we're really excited to be attending the Six River Systems User Conference. That's entitled Flow 2020. So, Greg, all about the future of logistics, operations, and warehousing. You've got senior executives from Six River Systems and Shopify keynoting, and it's free to attend.
If you're talking about retail fulfillment, and you have the opportunity to hear from Shopify, listen up.
Absolutely. No brainer. No brainer.
How can you get anyone more authoritative and neutral?
Yeah.
By the way, right.
And you can check that out. We've got the direct link to that in the show notes as well. And one more from our friends over at Reuters Events, Supply Chains. It's Supply Chain USA virtual. Greg, you and I would love to be in Chicago as we're speaking. We're amongst the speakers for this event.
Yes.
But it's going to be virtual this year. Maybe back in Chicago next year. We'll see.
We can do a Chicago backdrop, maybe green screen.
Hey, it's all about getting creative, right?
Yeah.
Get someone
going to be in my backdrop. Gino's East. It's going to be right there.
But kudos to Nick Stiliano and the team. They've put a home run panel together. We play a very small part. Sandra McQuillan with Mondelez International. Greg Lemkel, who's CEO of the On the Move Lineage Logistics.
Yeah.
They've acquired about 16
they don't own
companies.
you yet. They will soon.
Amen. Well, yeah. Our friend Colin Yankee with Tractor Supply Company. Those are three of numerous other keynotes.
Yeah.
Good stuff there.
Chairman and CEO of ArcBest. I mean, there's some heavy hitters in this group.
That's sure. Right. Join us there October 7th and 8th virtually. And we've got a link in our show notes. You can get a free taster pass. I'm not sure exactly what all that entails, but go ahead and sign up for it because you're not going to want to miss these the keynotes that we've mentioned and plenty of others that will be there. And if there's something we talked about here today that you can't find, you can't Google, it's not popping up, shoot us a note, Amanda@supplychainnowradio.com. We will make sure we get you connected to all the great thought leadership that Tim and Shannon laid out there. Or if there's a link you can't find, just shoot us a note. We'll try to serve as a resource as best that we can. Greg, great show. I really enjoyed. We knew what was coming, right? We familiar with Shannon and Tim, and we enjoyed the planning calls with what they were going to share today. But man, so much good stuff. And then had the audience to weigh in and accentuate or kind of share different takes on visibility and all things data. It's funny. I think back when big data first became kind of a thing to say, and just how far we have come as an industry, since that time. But great show today, huh?
I think to me, this just reinforces the lesson that, as we've said before, you've got to get your people involved. You've got to start small. I think it's easiest if you start with a really proximate pain, something that hurts so bad you feel compelled to change it. And the other that I think is not as obvious is you're going into the wilderness, right? This whole data thing is a wilderness. Get a guide. When we talk about speed and we talk about effectiveness, it's dangerous to go into the wilderness without a guide. So get a guide, have somebody help you through it. The money that you'll spend to have somebody help you get through the process will come back tenfold.
Well put. A great thought to wrap up today's show on. So to the audience, again, thanks. You're all the reason we do this. Really appreciated how y'all brought it today.
No doubt.
So much perspective on each of the questions and beyond. And it really makes, conducting these shows very rewarding on our Supply Chain Now team's part. So with that in mind, issue this challenge. We challenge our team. We challenge our audience. Hey, do good, give forward, be the change that's needed. And on that note, we'll see you next time here on Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.